Hey guys, we're back in the shop. So I finished the updates to the triplane. I just want to quickly go through and show you what I've done. So we'll go around to the front over here. All right. So as I mentioned, a couple of quick things I want to do for updates this year. One of which was to swap out the intake tubes for the engine. So those were too small. Originally I made them on, I think, half-inch aluminum tubing, maybe half-inch 5/8. Anyway, they definitely look way too small, so I swapped that out for 3/4-inch aluminum tube, which would equate to 3-inch on the full size, which I think is about right from what I've studied. Those were the intake pipes that went into the carburetor and then fed the engine from the back. So that was pretty easy. I just dremelled out the holes a bit bigger and cut new pieces of tube, and it looks a lot better. The other thing was fitting the dummy engine, which you can see now. Get that angled right. Still learning to steer this thing. All right, so there's the dummy. From a distance, like if I step way back here, I think it looks pretty decent. What's up close, you can tell it's a fake. But from a distance, which is what we were going for, it looks pretty good. As you can see, to fit it in front of the real engine, I had to push it up tight against the cowl. So up close it looks silly because obviously it can't rotate when it's jammed up against the edge of the cowl, and I had to cut away a lot. It's just a half engine really. With, you can see I used half of it and cut out the back of the cylinders to wrap around the real engine, right? And you have these intake tubes, all 3D printed plastic. I just glued it together and made some standoffs to fit it around the engine and attach to the firewall. To make it look a little bit better, I painted it. So I did a coat of Tester's Model Master steel, which I still have some, even though they stopped making Model Master paints. So I did a full coat of steel, and then I took black and just dry brushed the top of the cylinders to make it look a little bit worn. And then over the top of that, I brushed on one coat of oil-based polyurethane, because the oil base will yellow over time, and that'll give it the look of varnish. These engines used total loss castor oil oiling system, and that castor oil, for anybody who's ever remembered the old days of glow ignition model engines, that castor builds up this kind of thick yellowish varnish coat, which the engines would look all greasy and varnished. So that does that. So I think it looks, I think it looks nice. The intake tubes aren't perfect, but I got them to glue on there, and it gives you the illusion. And when the prop's in the way from a distance, I think it looks pretty nice. Right? So that's that. As I mentioned while I was at it, I gave it a full servicing because it hasn't had a really going through in a while. This will be coming up on 5. It's got 4 flight seasons on it, although we don't fly it a lot, so it's probably got less than 50 flights. 4 seasons takes its toll. I did do a lot of tightening up of the fabric. This is SolarTech's fabric with Warbird Colored's water-based paint on it. The nice thing is, if you go carefully with a heat gun, the temperature that the fabric will start to shrink is lower than the temperature that would melt the paint. So you can use the heat gun, just work carefully. You got to keep it moving, and you can reshrink the loose spots, and it's not going to mess with the paint job, which is really nice. Also, a lot of the wires had come loose. All these cables that I had tensioned 5 years ago were starting to stretch a little bit. So I had to retension things. None of this is functional. These are just there for the look. The cross cables, the cab vanes, and on the landing gear. But I set those up with wheel turnbuckles so I could tension everything up. So tightened the fabric, tensioned up the cables, went through and double checked the engine, pulled the plug, took a look at it. Still looks practically new because we just don't have a lot of flight time on it. A couple of the lines on the fuel tank were getting stiff, old Tygon, so I replaced a couple of those. Also had to tension up the cable pulls for the tail. So again, I've got tension turnbuckles or clevises so I could tighten those things up. There was a lot of play, so it's all nice and tight. Everything's nice and tight. Gave it a good cleaning. And I'll probably check the batteries over, and other than that, look around for anything that's loose. She's in pretty good shape, ready for the flying season. And actually, Joey and I are hoping to finally go to Rhinebeck this year. So for any of you guys who ever go to the Rhinebeck RC Jamboree in the fall, come look for the triplane and Joy's pup, and we'll be hanging out, I hope. So that's it. She's ready to go. And one of these days I'll do a full walkthrough detail of the build, but that'll be a much longer video because I can talk and I can tell you a lot about this plane. And that's all. So again, thanks for watching, and hope to see some of you guys out this year.